All right, let's highlight some of the points about steamboats that you want to be able to recognize in a testing environment. First off, the point that the steamboats are the key to the transportation revolution in the Midwest, on the Mississippi River watershed, north and south. You want to think in terms of the interior of the country being opened up in a north-south direction by the steamboats and being opened up to east-west traffic by the Erie Canal and the feeder canals into the Erie. Okay, thinking of steamboats, the key effect of the steamboats was in reducing the upstream freight rates because, not surprisingly, getting downstream was pretty darn easy. You could just float on a raft. Ask Huck Finn. The key point of upstream rates is that when upstream rates come down, then it becomes worthwhile to farm in the sense that you get something back for what you've sent downriver. So from 1815 until the Civil War, steamboats are the key to transportation for the Midwest. The steamboats are destroyed in the chaos of the Civil War, and afterwards it turns out that the railroad network is providing services such that the steamboats no longer are in play. Not exactly sure why they didn't phase out more slowly. Not a focus for us. Make sure you're able to recognize the data on cents per ton mile upstream on the Mississippi River. Look at this. It goes from 32 cents. That's the kind of number we saw for wagon transport. Just 5 years later, that rate has dropped to what is that? Something like a third, almost a third, 12 cents per ton mile. And then, holy cow, 40 years later, it's dropped to a half cent per ton mile. Calculating those as growth rates, 12 cents from 32 cents in 5 years represents a 20% year drop. It's a growth of productivity, perhaps, of 20% per year, or a decline of cost of 20% per year. But the 40 years that followed are also extraordinarily powerful because we've got an 8% decline per year in transport costs. We like to think a little bit about the quick 5-year effect on transportation costs on the Mississippi. We call that the Eureka Effect. Eureka, like somebody's got a great idea, they go, Eureka, I've got it. So the idea is applying steam to steamboats, big sudden effect on transport costs. But over the next 40 years, the transport costs continue to fall. We call that the diffusion effect. And the question here is, why and how did the diffusion occur? To what extent then does the powerful effect of innovative technology, those powerful effects, they take time to work out. You get a great idea, but then you got to figure out how to really put it into place. We're hoping for that kind of a breakthrough in battery technology, for example, but even if they come up with some big scientific breakthrough, then there's going to be a lot of figuring it out for the technology to diffuse. So, Eureka versus diffusion is one of the issues we talk about with reference to the steamboats. Now, some of the discussion of how technology diffused and how the improvements in transport costs on the Mississippi unfolded is related to our next topic. So let's talk briefly about how there was improvements in steamboat design and engines, specifically larger sizes of boats and of engines. Also, there were important improvements in clearing the Mississippi River, in marking the Mississippi River, and improving harbors. We want to think of both of those sorts of improvements, which these scholars, Hack and Walton, estimated as being responsible for the fairly gradual improvements in Mississippi transport rates over the 40 years before the Civil War. We want to recognize this idea of economies of scale, that when you have a boat that's twice the size, then the same docking and undocking costs get spread over twice the cargo. So it's kind of reducing your overhead if you're a business person. More generally, larger boats will have greater capacity. You can double the capacity at less than double the cost. All right, these in turn are connected to the issues in the government's role in steamboats. Loosely, the idea of Hamilton versus Jefferson, but here more narrowly, what good does or can the government do for the economy? The steamboats at first glance just seem like pure laissez-faire. You guys got a bunch of people with their own boats running them on the river. And I want you to think of modern day trucking as analogous, because then you'll recognize the role of the government in providing roads for trucks and helping to provide the Mississippi River for the state. Now, it's beyond the scope of our class and you just reading some notes to really get a handle on this material, but if you've done public economics or maybe some microeconomics, you might recognize the idea that something like the Mississippi River represents a natural monopoly, that something like choosing whether or not to prevent a fire on your ship, on your steamboat, has important implications for the well-being of others. So we're talking about externalities from your steamboat being in a harbor. And we're talking about the issue of moral hazard, which is the extent to which insurance companies are going to be willing to insure steamboats depending upon what sort of fire and safety regulations the government is imposing on those steamboats. So in short, just be alert that there is definitely an efficiency justification for a role of government, ranging from providing dredging services and charting services on the Mississippi, providing harbors and docks, all activities, infrastructure activities, which the private sector will tend to undersupply in a competitive market environment, because the gains from these sorts of projects spread far beyond simply possible gains to the firm trying to provide the infrastructure. So in short, I know it's a bit of a blah, 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 but the point for you to know is, hey, yes, there is an efficiency justification for government when you have externalities, when you have a river system that needs to be charted and maintained. As economists, we say, yeah, the government can make things better here. Wrap it up here. I hope you might be aware of very general political debate and discussion about what the government or governments can and should do to promote the efficiency of the economy and to promote general welfare. And those are the issues that in part we like to think about with reference to the government having played a very large and direct role in something like the Erie Canal, and the government having played a less direct but still important background role in the case of the steamboats. So for the people who during the debates over Franklin Roosevelt's New Deal claimed that his federal government interventions in the economy represented un-American activities, some scholars directed attention back to the steamboats and the Army Corps of Engineers' early work on the Mississippi River, directed attention to state enterprises like the Erie Canal, and said, hey, no, there's a great American tradition of the government promoting a strong, robust, and well-functioning economy. And hence we've got a government role in the transportation revolution. Okay, that's it for now. Thanks. Bye-bye.